cutting edge of technology.
Wow. Well, what does that mean? I don't know. What does that mean?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hold Up, the show where we dive deep inside your childhood nostalgia, pull the movies from your past out to see if they truly hold up. I'm not only here with Andrew and Kyle via the Subway Hot Take Hotline, but we also have the lead singer of Material Girl, the hottest rock band in the Atlanta area, Blair Perry.
It's a rock cover band. Don't hype me up too much.
Way to dampen your intro there. He set
I don't
you
want
up.
people to be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear this brand new band and all these cool songs I've never heard before. Hi, everybody.
Well, there you go. No one needs to go out there and follow Material Girl.
Yeah, nice little self-deprecation to start this episode.
If you like old 80s, 90s rock, then yes, please do.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And Kyle, how are you feeling over there in Chattahoochee land?
In the Choo-Choo-Hoo-Choo?
Yes.
Well, feeling all right. It's pretty warm out right now.
I think Blair actually has a question for you.
I do.
Yes.
I have a steamy question.
Yeah.
Ooh, steamy.
If you were to describe the way that you are feeling using an appliance, like a household appliance, preferably one you might find, I don't know, like an old cabin.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say a rusty fucking bottle opener that literally only serves one purpose in life. And you could do it with the side of a table, the 90-degree angle. You could do it using your fingers. But God damn it, my only existence is to fucking top off a bottle. That's how I feel right now.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, at least you serve a purpose.
Speaking of serve a
Exactly.
purpose,
Singular.
we watched Brave Little Toaster.
Ooh. What a movie.
What a time that was. That was like taking a bunch of Xanax.
It was
It was,
something.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this now. Any of you folks that like to do like recreational drugs and watch this kind of stuff, I don't think I would recommend this.
Honestly,
it's pretty
no.
tough.
It hits you.
Kind of terrifying. And
many
also, I
different
had
ways.
a lump in my throat the entire time watching this. I was just kind of like, why do I feel like I'm on the verge of crying at all times?
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Blair, why did we watch The Brave Little Toaster?
When I was a kid, am I getting too far ahead? Can
No,
I
go ahead.
No, this is what we want.
This was Blair's pick, by the way, for everyone listening out there.
Love this movie, but I liked it when I was so young. I watched it so many times when I was really young, like 4, 5, 6, that thinking back on it, I had not rewatched it until recently. And I thought that it was maybe just like a fever dream. Like maybe I didn't even really know what the movie was even really about or anything. I just had these fond memories of it. But I did remember it being kind of scary. But I liked it. And not to get too far ahead, but it was just as terrifying, honestly, as a full-grown human.
Was this a top 5 movie in your childhood?
It's hard to say because I watched so many movies so many more times over the course of my entire childhood. Like there were some movies like Aladdin where you watch it for the first time in the early 90s and then you just keep watching it and you've seen it several times since then. So as far as like how many times I've watched it throughout my life, no. But when I was really young in like the early 90s, I probably would have put it in my top 5. I watched it a lot.
Yeah. Andrew, what about you? What kind of childhood do you have with The Brave Little Toaster?
First off, I want to ask Kyle, are you okay? That was a hefty cough there.
I'll be fine. Why don't you worry about you?
Okay. I'm just looking out for my friend.
He's getting a prostate exam right now.
He's
so
doing a lot.
I was asked to
Kyle's a
cough by the doctor.
multitasker.
Okay.
It's very important at our age that we,
Especially at the age of 34.
34 and at home, 7 o'clock at night.
Hard
Super
out at
dangerous
9.
situation.
And
But-
with all that, back to your childhood,
Yeah.
Andrew, it should remind you of a lot of things.
So I remember watching this a lot when I was younger, like 5 or 6. I had it on VHS, which is probably a rare collectible nowadays.
I had it on VHS too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder where that is.
And I watched it a number of times. I remember really liking it, but also like knew going into it that it was a little nerve-wracking. Did not understand the brevity of it all at that young age. I just thought the journey they took was long and arduous, and it is, but like there's so much more to it than that. And it has a decent resolution, so it was all happy, I guess, in the end. But I remember it being kind of a challenge to watch, but I enjoyed that challenge, and I loved the characters, and it was one that I put on frequently. I wouldn't... Maybe it was a top 5. I don't think it was, like... If it was on my top 5, it'd be probably like number 5 or 4. Land Before Time and some others were higher up, but this one was close to the top for sure.
It is Land Before Time-ish. Like I was really into Land Before Time, and also terrifying, also scary, and sad,
very sad,
horribly sad. But something about the characters. Now, as I was talking about it, I'm like, why did I even like this movie?
Yeah,
I was really into all the voices, and I guess that was probably why I liked it.
They're all very defined characters too, and easily you can attach to and feel something through one or all of them. So very, very relatable, I guess, for a kid.
Yeah, and I thought they were funny.
Yeah,
There was a lot of those movies when we were kids where we had these weird journeys by different cast of characters, and it was all like related in a like some sort of metaphor for like the passage of time. And because think about Land Before Time, that was like a brutal journey of like growing up, and then this movie gets really deep into like abandonment issues and
existentialism and just existence in general, and what your purpose is.
And then you had stuff like American Tail, which showed the metaphors of the Holocaust, and there was a lot of those movies that came out like when we were little that were just brutal subject matter that you know I wanted we should have brought on one of our parents to talk about that,
honestly,
to see if they remembered.
Did they catch on? Like, did my parents watch this movie while I was watching it, and they were just like, yeah, sure?
My dad used to say,
there's no way they weren't horrified.
Yeah, that was the thought that I had while watching it last. I was like, why did my mom let me watch this
I think
so much?
So many things, because there were some things that they didn't really like. If my parents ever really watched Ren and Stimpy while I was watching it, they would have been like,
or
no.
Rocco's Modern World or something like that. Yeah.
Rocco's Modern Life.
Sorry, no, thank you.
dare you.
I needed that correction.
But this movie, I'm pretty sure they watched it with me. They never said a
maybe
word.
they just didn't pay attention.
They were let me be horrified and scarred for life.
They thought it was a kids movie, and that's when they could just peace out and let me be preoccupied and do whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah. They heard Tutti Frutti probably at the beginning. They're like, amazing. What a cute little
and John Lovitz
film.
is in it. Now,
Good old John Lovitz.
Kyle, what do you remember about the Brave Little Toaster?
Well, I'll start off my portion by asking Blair a question, and that would be, what was specifically the most scary part about this when you were watching it as a child? Like, specifically, because that brought up something when you were talking about scary.
So much of this movie there were so many scary parts. As I was watching it, I just there's more and more. I was like, oh my gosh, that was terrifying. But then at the very end, the part that I would have said before rewatching it as an adult, I think ended up it was the scariest part, and that's the end with the giant car magnet picking up the cars, and it was like committing just murder after murder, and it was horrifying. That part really freaked me out.
The clown not get you?
I'm not really big. Clowns don't really get me.
I didn't like the clown when I watched it recently. I didn't remember.
Did you cry?
No, but I was like, what? I was just alarmed at some of the things that I saw.
And the clown didn't make sense. Even we were rewatching, I was like, why
he was
a clown?
Firefighter who came in to stop the toaster fire or the kitchen fire or whatever, and he had giant grimacing teeth and just evil eyes, and
He was definitely a Joker, like version of a clown, like a psychotic.
But I'll be honest. Kyle asked Blair what her scariest part was. I didn't really remember a lot of these scary parts that we're going to discuss. I really didn't.
I really just remembered that last one, honestly.
Yeah,
I remember Phil Hartman's demise.
Did you really?
I didn't remember any of that.
I remember it scared me because I thought he was like getting very angry, which he was. He was, having a panic attack basically, but. I remember always shielding my eyes when the air conditioner exploded. That
part came right back to me as we were watching it. Like, it felt like, literally, when you say reaching into your childhood nostalgia, it felt like somebody was just reaching into my brain, just like yanking it Or actually, it was more like a slow pull. Where like just slowly pulling like a rope out of a murky lake and just like got algae and shit all over it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like. I was like, oh gosh, like that's right. Like I suddenly remembered it. Like I had just watched it yesterday.
I did, and I also didn't think about how good the music was in this, which I think.
I didn't
The
even think
music's
of it-
excellent.
I didn't think of it as even having had music
Yeah.
in it. It's almost a musical.
Yeah, there are four. Aren't there 3 or 4 like songs?
Well, it's famous composer too, right?
John Newman, I think.
John Newman.
Yeah, I don't.
I can't remember who this guy's first
And
name
then
was. But.
the other guy who did the songs is Van Dyke Parks.
Yes, I wrote his name.
And he is well known because he worked with Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys when Brian Wilson had his mental episodes and essentially collapsed for years. He was supposed to write the answer to Pet Sounds, and Van Dyke Parks was supposed to be his partner in crime, and Brian lost his mind. And that's his like claim to glory, if you will. He obviously wrote some stuff, but to see his name actually show up in some sort of like credit that we're familiar with is, kind of cool for me.
Yeah.
But
Also, and this might be the actual scariest part more than the end, because I had a visceral reaction to it both times we actually rewatched that part the very next night, and I had the same exact reaction. The record player with the needle nose.
Oh, it was weird.
Oh, and
yeah.
his like needle nose. He like leans over and starts playing the record, and the music's scary, but there's something about his needle nose. Oh, I can't say.
And it was almost like one of like Beethoven's. I forgot the name of the symphony, but it sounded reminiscent of something like that.
It was definitely like a la Dracula.
Yes.
Oh, you meant Bach,
Yeah.
Andrew.
Sorry, yeah, Bach, Beethoven.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking. I understand.
There's-
Yeah,
there's-
very,
there's
very much
similar.
so.
Yeah.
Whatever, they're dead.
So, Kyle, now that Blair's answered your question, so our question is, what do you remember about this movie from your childhood, other than the scary parts?
I remember, like, I think this is one of the times that I had like an existential crisis as a child. Like,
How old were you when you saw this for the first time?
I think I saw this like when it came out on VHS, so probably like 95. 90, I don't know. What did this come out? What year did this come out?
87, I think.
89.
89 or 87, yeah. I'm gonna
Yeah,
look real quick.
it was probably. I was probably very young when I saw this, but I saw it a couple times. But
87.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in
Is
about
87?
like I don't know, like fucking 28 years, something like that. Probably.
Did you watch it a lot as a kid, or was it just like...
I watched it. I just texted my mom and asked her. I was like, "Do you remember this movie?" Because I remember watching this movie, but she didn't respond. So
Thanks,
me.
Terry.
So.
We needed your help on this podcast, Terry, and you didn't give. So we'll remember that.
I'll never forget. But I think this is one that my mom would just sit me down and watch. But I think she did watch this with me. I'm pretty sure. I'd be interested to hear what she had to say, because it is very much there's a lot going on. There's a lot of themes happening. I see what you guys were saying. We were kind of talking about this beforehand about like just how many different moving parts there are with like thematically. It seems simple, but then like you're like, no, that's a reference to something.
It's
That's
very mature.
deep. It's very mature. There's a lot of things going on in it, but I think specifically like the scariest part for me was when they're in the Radio Man shop or whatever he is, like the tinkerer.
Oh, yeah.
He's just like very systematically murdering them and like taking what they need from it as like it's almost like a transaction. Which, talk about the Holocaust. That's something when I was watching that I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of that. There's aspects of it in there. There's a lot more going on to it than just that. It's not a direct reference, but it is still very. I don't know of another. Forgive me, but it's really fucked up. Like I don't know what to say about it. You know, like it's tough.
And we can dive into each scene as we do our blow by blow. I remember watching this movie a lot as a kid. I had it on VHS. I also had, what was it? Brave Little Toaster Goes to Mars.
Brave Little Toaster to the rescue, and then Brave Little
To the
Toaster goes to
rescue.
Mars.
And I think I had all three, and I would watch Brave Little Toaster all weekend.
Yeah.
But I watched this one the most. And I remember vividly my dad always saying, "Oh, Brave Little Toaster, that's a cute little movie." And that sticks in my head now as I watch it as an adult. Because I was like, that is not a cute movie at all. Like, I
Because
don't
they're
know
like,
if I
oh, the little blankie.
That's what I remember from.
with an actual kid's voice.
Yeah, it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, and it makes it
so much
worse
deeper.
now. It makes it so much worse that you know that that's a kid's voice.
Yeah.
But I watched a lot of it. I remembered everything as we were watching the movie too.
Oh, fun little fact before I forget. Y'all know who voiced the vacuum?
It was the same guy as Tony the Tiger. It was
Yeah,
something
it
Raven,
was.
Ravenscroft.
Thurl Ravenscroft. It was also
yeah.
the guy
Yeah.
who sang "You're a Mean One."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was his moment of glory. But this is him, 20, 30 years later.
And then
So-
John Lovitz and Phil Hartman too.
Oh,
I can't
Phil
forget
Hartman. Yeah.
Phil Hartman, John
Right.
Lovitz.
Phil Hartman.
R.I.P. Phil.
All right, Andrew. This is our next segment. And I
Yeah.
think this is going to be a little fun to talk about. But what kind of box office mojo numbers are we looking at?
None.
None.
There are none because
None.
this
Thank
movie
God.
was not released. I'm pretty sure it went straight to VHS and was sold worldwide because of how Disney wanted it to go.
What, on a budget of 2.3 mil?
No, it was more than that. They originally started out at 12.3 and they whittled it down to like 5.6 million.
Okay, impressive.
And John Lasseter wanted to do this with CGI animation, and Disney was like, no, why would you do that? And John's like, well, it's just as, affordable. And the person who was in charge said something to the effect of like, well, if it's not cheaper or easier, then we're not going to do CGI. And he pitched a fit, and actually he left shortly after that. So I don't even think he was really a part of the creation of this.
I think he's still the writer. I think he's still.
Is he still the writer?
I think
I
he's
think-
still
okay.
credited because they left for a while and Disney became like a third party.
It was Hyperion Pictures is who they gave it to, which is like
Yeah.
a subsidiary of Disney or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't. Disney still. I don't even know if they didn't have the rights to it, but they still had ownership in some capacity.
They could produce it, so they
Yeah.
could do stuff straight to VHS.
Yes.
Media rights,
But
basically.
they also gave some of the distribution rights to Fox and CBS too, so
Yeah.
it wasn't just Disney's, even though it was under the umbrella of Disney. So no theatrical release, no box office numbers. This was kind of one that Disney seemingly wanted to squash.
Yeah,
And
that's
they-
what I was gonna say. Blair, did you know that the Brave Little Toaster is one that Disney's been trying to bury?
I remember you talking about that. First, I want to say I didn't pick this movie for this reason, but I was so happy to find out there weren't any box office numbers because I was so nervous about guessing. That's always the part whenever I'm listening to the podcast and he's like, "Can you make a guess?" And I was like, "I have not one clue."
It's fun to guess.
I'm just so bad at knowing numbers. Even as I've listened to as many episodes as I have, and I still don't. I still would be a terrible guesser, so thank God. But yes, I have heard.
Lucky
we
you.
talked about this a little bit. That Disney wanted to bury this
Yeah.
film, and does it have to do with at what point did that happen? Was that from the very from
That
the
was
get-go?
essentially from the beginning because it's based on a novella.
Right, okay,
I
yes.
forgot the name of the guy. We should find his name
I
here in a
had
second.
his name. I wrote in my notes, look into the novella, and I did, but I didn't write my notes on it. Therefore, I have forgotten them.
We are a professional podcast, everybody.
yeah.
really good.
Based on a novella by Thomas M. Dish. And Lasseter did not actually write. He didn't write any of this. He didn't direct. I don't think he really had a hand in it. He kind of left in 83. But I wanted to say Hyperion Pictures was made up of a bunch of youngins from Cal Arts.
Pixar, right?
Those were the original founders of Pixar. So think about some of the other movies that they made and what this might have influenced.
And they finally did get to use that CGI that they were talking about.
Yes.
Yep.
In
What is it? Toy Story.
Story.
No, you guys are all wrong. It's not Toy Story.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
definitely not.
George of the
Definitely not
Jungle?
Toy Story. Yep.
Yeah, live action.
Tarzan. Disney tried to move on from this real quick.
Yeah.
And if you followed the episode with John where we talked about the death of the rental store, we mentioned the Brave Little Toaster as part of. There's a excess amount of VHS movies that are getting destroyed almost weekly now.
yeah.
So we're losing this art and this media because Disney has no plans to bring this back from the vault, to release a Blu-ray, to put it on streaming. We had to watch this on YouTube. So
Yep.
I'm
that's
surprised that we were able to watch the whole thing.
Full thing.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
You could rent it on Amazon for $25. I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
So-
surprised you still can rent it.
I
on
didn't even
Amazon.
see it. I didn't see it on
Yeah.
Amazon when I looked.
It
into
was on it today, so maybe it wasn't there when we checked originally, but it was on there today.
That's a good start.
They found out we were going to be doing it on this podcast.
Yeah, they knew Hold Up was
Every-
into something.
So they're all going to get you, everybody. Wait for it. It'll go down to $9.99. But this movie is being buried by Disney. They didn't like it from the beginning. I don't think they really see it as Disney messaging. Now, you see this before with Disney. They have been burying their own products for a very long time for different reasons. one that comes to mind is Song of the South. I know Andrew knows all
Why
about
on
that
earth
one.
would they want to bury that?
I don't know.
Fantastic film.
I'm not sure.
And that's not that we'll pass that subject along for another day. But Disney does like to move on pretty quickly and make sure that you do not remember some of their failures, even though they thought this was going to be a failure and it was a major hit when it hit VHS. I don't have any of the VHS sales numbers, but it revitalized this movie and became a cult classic.
When did it? Because if it was released in '87, obviously none of us were alive. Even me, none of us were alive in that year. So it must have been re-released in what, like '92 or '3? Because why do we all have it? And why do we all watch it?
There was a big VHS market in the late '80s, early '80s too. But so it probably went straight to VHS then, and probably got a re-release in the early '90s.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kyle,
I'm betting
you know
it was
anything.
'92 or '93. That's what I'm thinking.
But anyway, are we ready to go blow by blow on Disney's biggest failure / success?
Let's dive into it.
Let's blow it.
Let's blow it.
Let's
All right.
blow it.
All right. Blair, do you want to do the honors of letting us know where this movie starts?
I was afraid you were going to say that, which is exactly why I memorized exactly how it starts, because I couldn't tell you how a single movie I've ever seen starts. I have a terrible memory.
I'm the same way.
But I remember this one. So it opens on a cabin. You can tell that it's in the middle of nowhere, up on top of a hill. It's kind of foggy. And they zoom in through the window. They want to make sure that you know that it's a dilapidated cabin that no one is currently visiting regularly because the shutters are askew. And I think that's how it indicates that there ain't nobody here. Except for, and then they go all the way into the house. And that's when you first start to see the characters.
Yeah, and they're all like sleeping, right? We've got
Yes.
Kyle, what kind of characters do we have?
We got a fucking toaster. We got a little blanket. We've got, and this blanket is like,
I thought it was a bar of soap.
I
in
thought
a
it was
blanket
too.
For like the
That's what,
longest
I thought
time.
it was like something stuck onto the blanket, like some nasty kid treat, like just some gnarly sticky substance.
It's an electrical blanket, right?
It hit me
Yes.
watching it this time.
Yeah.
As an adult, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's
An
dial.
electrical blanket.
I just thought it was a
Yeah.
face they
Had
gave
no
a blanket
idea.
when I was a kid. I didn't think it was anything
Yeah.
but like appendages.
I didn't
but-
have an electric blanket when I was a kid. I didn't.
Yeah.
I
I
thought
didn't
it was just a bar of soap. I was like, I guess it's a towel. And
Yeah, it wasn't very clear as a child. But
No.
then we also have the lamp, and we also have the toast. Did I say the toaster?
You
I
said
think
the
it's the
toaster. That was the
first.
first one you said.
And the vacuum,
And
the
toaster.
radio,
the radio, tube radio. Yeah.
and also there's a number of other, more secondary and tertiary characters that are very much in the movie and are animated very well in certain parts.
Yeah.
But one of the ones in the very beginning that we'll get right into was the air conditioner unit.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
yeah, so and this movie sets up where all these characters, they start doing chores, right? Like
Yeah.
they're trying to do their daily task of living, and living is doing chores. So
Keeping
they're
the
all-
house clean for the master.
right,
Yep.
and
The
they
master.
they keep talking about this master, and they have a picture of him, and it's this little boy. You can just tell they've left this cabin. It's a secondary home or
He's a little
vacation
ginger
home.
boy. I feel like we
Vacation
should
home.
include that. He's ginger.
He is
Yeah,
very ginger.
Glasses and ginger, and kind of looks like Andrew as a child.
Except I've
Yes.
never had red hair in my life, but yes.
Not yet. Give it time.
Yeah.
You'll grow into it.
Sure I will.
Never
You'll
say
love
never.
it. You'll love it a lot, Andrew. It's fine.
Thank you.
So they start doing chores, and they're bickering a lot. The tube radio, which is played by John Lovitz, or voiced by John Lovitz, I should say, is annoying.
I love him. It's my favorite. He's my favorite
he was-
character as an adult. I absolutely love that character.
He does deliver,
Yeah.
like, we'll get to it later. He does deliver one of the funniest lines in the movie.
Yeah, you rewatched it 5 times.
It was great. I was cackling over
I'm
this.
curious as to
rewinding.
what that line is because I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head.
We'll
so
get there.
We'll get
Okay.
there.
But he's like doing his like tutti frutti, like
Yeah.
song and dance. Yeah. And as they're cleaning, we get that. And good job, Kyle.
Woo! Okay,
Yeah.
hit on. Woo! I need to talk about Tutti Frutti really quickly because I don't know, now rewatching this movie and hearing that song made me wonder if me loving this movie is the reason that my dad taught me how to play it on piano. But song is special to me. It's the very first song I ever learned to play on the piano.
Oh, wow.
In the style that I currently play now, which is just by guitar chords. Like I just play it by ear, as my dad says, and I use air quotes. And I learned it when I was maybe 5, and I played it and sang it. And I did this song for a competition, like a what do you call it? What do you call those things where you show talent show when I was a kid.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, same.
And so anyway, this song is like a big deal in my childhood, and I wonder which came first, my dad just loving the song and me learning it, or
This one.
this movie.
Little Richard came first, and then Brave Little Toaster, then you, then your dad.
Who came first, me or Little Richard? By the way, this is you should, if you haven't seen the documentary about Little Richard, it came out like 2 years ago, like 2023, and it's called I Am Everything. It is phenomenal. You must see it if you haven't.
Okay,
I'll tuck
Write
that one
down.
in the pocket.
Yeah.
You're not wearing pockets.
Actually, I do. I've got 3 if you want to count, but
How many of them, Andrew? How many of them are usable? Be real.
He's got nature's pocket, and that's always reusable.
3 of them are usable, Kyle. I'm being very real with you.
So, moving forward, they do their song and dance. The blanket is the one that's really obsessed with the master. I hate that they keep saying master.
It's just a little, the word has connotations.
Yeah, song of the South.
Disney,
Here we are.
But they use that term master as like a term of endearment. It's like a term of endearment and respect, and like they look up to this thing because he gives them a purpose.
And we'll start with this little section when they're here in the cabin, where I'm like breaking it down in my head. Like, we get a lot of like religious overtones here, where you're talking about a creator and you're talking about looking up to someone and waiting for someone to come back or save you, even though there's no sign that the master exists. Obviously, they have their memories. The lamp tells a story of where his bulb burned out and the master replaced the bulb.
Yep.
And he was able to shine light again.
And then they hear a car.
He healed him.
And
He healed him.
They hear a car and they're like, oh, there's a car coming down the road. Maybe they don't get much traffic in the mountains or wherever the heck they are, so they all scramble
in
up.
Austell, Georgia.
Something like that. What's north of Helen? Something in that area.
Not in one thing.
But anyways, they all travel up to like the top floor because it's the highest lookout window, and they lift Blanky up to look out, and they do see a car coming. And all of a sudden, like, Blanky's overcome with like visions of this kid and childhood memories and what he used to do and what he used to be with them. And the Blanky's like, it's the master, it's him. And we're seeing these lovely childhood visions, and all of a sudden the car passes, and he withers
Blanky
away.
basically has a come apart at that point.
He cries.
Yeah.
And I can't, it's the most annoying cry I have ever heard in my life. And it didn't seem, I don't remember it bothering me when I was a kid, but hearing it now, I was like, oh,
was
I
kind of
almost couldn't
annoying.
listen
I
to
think
it.
as you get older too, it was so realistic of a child crying.
Yeah.
that
It literally was, because
It hits you.
as a kid.
It hits you right
Yeah,
here.
it's just like it's mind numbing
I
to
didn't
listen
like
to.
it.
And then as they're seeing the car drift by, the air conditioning unit, played by Phil Hartman, does his best Jack Nicholson impression, which I think I read that was what he was going
Oh,
for.
it has
Had
to
to have
be.
been.
It has to
And
be.
it was like very much The Shining.
It even
It
looked like
was
him. Like
very
with the
much-
eyebrows, like the top of the air conditioning unit looked like his eyebrows.
Makes
It was
me wonder
Jack
if
Torrance.
they tried to get Jack Nicholson and they were like, budget's too small, can't do that.
I mean, there's no way Jack would have done that
No.
at that point in time. But they have a
R.I.P.
conversation.
Phil Hartman, by
Yes,
the way, everybody.
R.I.P.
Second time on the show.
A true legend. But they have like a conversation with him because he's mocking them. He's like, you hold out hope for this guy that's never going to come back. Y'all are worthless, yada yada yada. And I think someone quips back to him, like, you're in a window pane, you can't move or do anything. And
It was the
Toaster.
No, I
Or
think.
was it?
Well, because are you going to say what he says back to him? Because I think it was the vacuum. Because then, what does the AC unit say back to the vacuum when he says that?
I don't know.
He says, "What are you going to do? Suck me to death?"
Yeah, that's what he did say. Yep. And he says it in
God.
that Nicholson voice.
And I think me and Blair were like, some people pay good money for that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think it was the toaster that says to him, you don't have much function. You just sit in the windowsill. You can't do anything. You can't go anywhere. And he starts to like freak out and like get like super emotional. He's like yelling and like crying. And
Yeah, but why was he crying though, Andrew?
because they whittled him down to nothing.
No, because his cord killed a boy. Anybody else get that?
His because he said it wasn't his fault that
that's
the
right.
kid
It
couldn't
wasn't my
reach.
fault. It's my function.
Yep. Yep, that's right.
Wait,
So he fucking killed a kid.
Yeah.
wait, but not
Yeah.
obviously not their kid, but another kid.
Yeah,
Maybe his brother or something. Yeah. So
who knows?
That's
it
why
was-
they moved out of the cabin.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, what the fuck?
I didn't catch that. How long do we think they have been gone from this cabin? Because at the beginning they
Probably
say like, "What are we gonna do
years.
today?"
they only remember him as a kid, and he's now an 18-year-old.
Oh, that's right, because now- yeah,
he's
yeah,
going
that's
to
right.
college.
18, yeah.
We find out
So
later.
probably at least 5 or 6 years, right?
Maybe longer.
Probably longer.
Probably yeah.
I said
From,
like
like-
8 to 10 almost.
I would say almost a decade, yeah, because he's going to college, so he's 18. He was in that picture. He looks, he could be 10,
Maybe, yeah.
8 years maybe,
8 years, I think, is fair.
which is a long time if you're an appliance, apparently.
Yeah.
Especially appliance that old.
But, you know, Phil Hartman, AC unit, just craps out and essentially, like,
Just explodes in anger.
And
Has a heart attack.
Yeah.
basically and dies in
The
front
window
of
It
him.
unit
seemed kind of like a
dies.
At first, I thought of it as more like a suicide, but then it did seem like it was a.
The first time we watched
More of a
it, it
heart
definitely
attack.
seemed like a suicide, and then I think the second time we watched it, we both understood that it was more heart attack due to anger or a stroke or something. I
Either
don't
way,
know.
it was horrific.
Yeah. And so there goes Phil Hartman. He's in the movie for all of 5 minutes, and
But he was
No,
great.
he's in another part as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. He
yes,
does.
Yes.
He does make a redemption story, like return.
But anyways, they, at that point, Toaster decides, like, hey, let's go find the master. Let's go to the city, because that's where the master lives. And they were like, well, we can't do that. And Toaster's like, sure we can. We'll make it happen. And what do?
And they do it because they see. Part of it is because they see somebody pull up.
That's
and,
right.
And hammer a for
Another
sale
car
sign.
comes by, and they're like,
Into
oh,
the
wow,
yard.
someone's here. And it's that for sale sign because, you know, clearly they've been forgotten about and abandoned.
Yeah, so that's how they knew for sure. Like, we got to get out of here.
We got to go find him now instead of just like understanding that he's left us for dead. Which, so they are appliances. The cord thing doesn't make any sense in this movie.
You've got to suspend some disbelief here.
Yeah, it's an
Lots
animated
of
movie.
that.
It's okay to suspend disbelief, but then they go back and forth a little bit. Like, oh no, they need their cords and electricity
Right.
to use it, but yet they're still operating without the cords and electricity. So I would have very
Yeah.
much rather them just not even go with the
Right. Don't
battery.
even. I mean, from the beginning when they were showing, none of them were plugged in. I think maybe the vacuum was, but like they're just hopping around dancing. Of course, the radio I think is battery powered.
Yeah, but Kyle, how do you feel about that? Because you always hate when people like go against reality.
Yeah, but this is a cartoon though,
Oh my
and like
God,
it's
here we
very much a cartoon. Like it makes sense for the world that it's in, but it is kind of dumb. And it took me out of it for a second because I was like, wait, like it's a secondary source of life for them. Do we get to breathe like carbon monoxide as well as oxygen?
Yeah.
I
Well,
was a little confused.
They also all dunk themselves in water later and are fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're in mud and shit. Like,
Well, they just create this point so that they have to bring a battery with them. And it just creates another plot point. So they wrote that in, but they didn't make it a mainstay for like the appliances themselves because none of them are plugged in at any time. And again, you can be like, oh, the electric blanket and the radio is battery powered. They can survive without the plug, but the lamp, no,
no.
not
Sorry.
happening. But they devised a plan to use what a rolling
rolling
chair,
A
chair.
rolling office chair,
Yeah.
desk chair, and
that's inanimate.
yeah, and they're all sitting
Right,
on
the
it.
chair, yeah, no, the chair. Of course,
And
don't be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Chairs can't talk.
seriously, Chase.
Yeah.
God.
Come on. But they are all sitting on that rolling chair. The vacuum cleaner attaches. It's Kirby. Just vacuum
Kirby.
cleaner.
Yes,
Kirby.
he's the only one
with
that
the
actually has a
name.
name.
Yeah.
Well, Blanky.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, lamp is not lamp. It's lampy.
Lampy.
It's lampy, blanky, toaster, and Kirby. It's like,
What was radio even anything?
oh, I think radio is. Yeah, I think it's just the radio.
Yeah.
Radio.
Yeah.
I wanted to call it Radiohead. I was waiting for a joke.
I
in
want
there.
to call it Tom York. Sorry,
That's
that was really lame.
God.
We just lost.
We're
just
off
lost
Spotify.
all of our
Yeah, we're off
followers.
Spotify right
Yeah.
now. Well, that was great. That was a fun run.
Sorry, y'all.
AG1's pulling out now.
So they devise a plan where the vacuum is pretty much going to suck them to the city.
Didn't he attach his power cord on the chair and
Yeah, he
pull
wrapped
Plugging
it.
it into the battery.
while he moves along the grass and the weeds and
Which I was like, he
Whatever.
got like 3 minutes into it. I was like, his back is really full.
oh yeah.
He's just rolling. I think he's just rolling. You can roll a vacuum cleaner without sucking.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know. I haven't vacuumed in years, but I remember from the 90s.
Kyle, do you know a lot about vacuums? You have pets.
So vacuums. Here's the thing. You gotta take this into consideration with vacuums. All right, it goes both ways. What goes in must come out, and what it does, a lot of surprises in there. I'll tell you something. You got to be careful. You got to be ready for what you see.
Where the fuck are you using a vacuum where you're having this kind of issue?
Listen, if you have to ask, you don't want to know.
It's fair.
Okay.
But
And he has 4 pets. So.
I think that's contradictory. If you are asking, you do want to know. So
No,
if you have
you don't
to
want to know.
ask,
Let me tell you. You don't
clearly
want to
wanna
know. You don't want to. There's a lot of blood.
I don't want to know. I personally
All right.
don't want to know. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
what I'm saying.
Thank you, Blair.
That's what I'm saying. You don't want to.
So on to the next little chapter.
This whole next part is, it feels like a mashup of like lots of other Disney-ish movies that I've seen, like
Homeward Bound or like stuff
Bambi-ish.
Like, Bambi,
there's a lot of Bambi.
Yes.
There's parts of it that are very Fantasia-esque.
Yeah.
Especially the score.
Yes, I got a lot of the score. That was one of the
old
big things that made
John
me think
Newman.
of Fantasia. Another movie that I absolutely loved as a child, but was also absolutely horrified by. It makes total sense now why I love horror movies. Realizing just how much I loved to terrify myself as a child.
We're not quite there yet, but I think there are plenty of horror elements in this movie.
Yeah, I
honestly.
mean-
And that's what she's
Yeah,
referencing
for
to.
sure.
And it felt really kind of Jungle Bookish too, a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, you already referenced it, but the dinosaur movie.
Land Before Time.
Land
Yeah,
Before
that
Time.
one.
Yeah.
Yep.
The raw emotion of that, especially.
So basically, what we're talking about is they make it to this like little wooded area where all these woodland creatures are alive. Like what frogs? We have mice. We
The
have
mice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The flowers are
there's
like
a
animate.
There's a fish and a worm,
Oh yeah, I love that little part with the fish and the worm that cracks me up.
and
That reminds me of the Fox and the Hound, the worm, and that reminds me of the caterpillar.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like a little
the
subplot.
little woodpecker.
Another movie you could throw into that raw emotion.
Oh my gosh,
honestly.
Fox and the Hound might be my top favorite.
That was mine when I was a kid.
And I quoted that movie in my salutatory address in high school, like to the crowd.
I watched it a couple years ago, and it made me cry. Like,
does
there's no
every
way.
time.
There's no way you
tears
can get away
up.
from it.
It
Yeah.
tears you up.
every time.
But anyways, they're in this
I'm a
woodland.
hound dog.
Oh God, don't even. They're in this wooded area. They're making their way through. They're getting to point A to point B. This part is somewhat.
Nothing really happens
Happens.
other than the blanket gets pulled away by the mice down a hole.
It gets like, it was a little bit like, oh, like what are these mice doing?
And they were
like
chewing-
taking
they
They
advantage
chewed
of
on
him.
his picture of the
The
master that he was
master.
clinging to the entire time.
Yeah, there's a weird part where the toaster, the things keep being obsessed with the toaster because they can see themselves in the reflection of the toaster. And then he at first kind of likes it, and then he's like, leave me alone. And then a flower looks and thinks it's another flower and falls in love with the reflection of itself. And then when Toaster's like, no, and like, I'm not a flower, and walks away, then he like watches the flower slowly die. It's so, there's got to be some, I keep thinking, I'm terrible with metaphors. I always say I don't believe in metaphors. I'm like, this must mean, all this must
They don't
mean
exist.
something, but I don't know what.
Yeah,
I'm sure they
I mean,
meant it to mean
it's-
something.
I see it as like through the life stages, right? Like you have your parents, you have your comfortability and home, and then you don't have your parents anymore, and you have to go out on your own, and you go into this weird world with all these other creatures who possibly have lived in the real world longer, and you don't like really fit in with any of them. And I feel like this is kind of that stage of life for these appliances, is they don't really fit in here. They're still trying to find the master, and they're still trying to find their place. They feel like that there's no use for them. And that's kind of like any human as we develop and get older.
They're on the journey of life.
The journey of life.
So you
God,
say.
That makes so much sense. I'm just like, to me, I'm just like, oh, it's just like some mice. I'm sure it's a metaphor. I don't know. I can't think.
The mice I can't explain.
But no, that makes perfect sense. I was kind of thinking like, oh, if the theme is like you have to live your purpose or whatever, then they are out of their element. I was thinking more in a literal sense, but you're absolutely right. That makes sense. Like they're out of their element. They're not where their purpose is, so they don't know what they're like. Kind of messing things up in this meadow.
And they're playing with a lot of different themes too. So anything that you come up with in this movie is just, you could hit the dartboard. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
The fish and the worm, though, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I think that was just for fun.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just think for fun.
Yeah, that reminded me of the frog that used to, hello, my lady, hello, my darling, hello, my ragtime guy.
And then they're like, look, it's my frog. He sings.
Right. Which I love that little short. That was one of my favorites. And that came on before Little Giants. If you don't remember that VHS copy, I know you remember it.
Maybe.
What was it?
Maybe.
Wait.
We're doing that one this September.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes, I do. Yes.
It came on before it as like an advertisement for Looney Tunes?
So in these VHS copies, and we're spinning it back, kids, for those of you who have never seen a VHS or
I know
played
what one is.
So before every...
What does it stand for? Do you guys remember?
Video.
Video
home system.
Yeah.
I remember the episode where you guys were like, oh my gosh, what does it stand for?
Yeah, we're idiots.
Yeah.
But
Nobody ever
before
said it out loud.
Before each feature presentation, there would be like either trailers or coming soon to Disney Home Video. And then there was always, like, in certain Disney movies, they would have, like, little shorts. Like, Pixar made it famous later.
Yeah.
But there was that frog one, I remember, came on before several different VHSs I had. And it was always Little Giants. So when I played Little Giants, I had to watch that little short. Sorry.
Coming this fall.
He digresses.
What happens next, Kyle?
This is when they're in the forest, right?
Yeah, there's a musical.
Yeah. So they go to the forest, and there was a moment in the forest of self-sacrifice that really stood out to me. That was the storm whips up essentially, and Blanky, having a large surface area and very, very flimsy, just gets caught up in the wind, and he just goes bye-bye. So they're trying to find him, and the rolly chair has the battery attached to it so they can all plug in, which I guess after that they didn't really need it. It was just kind of a thing that they were keeping with them. But a storm whips up, Blanky gets lost, and the lamp gets onto the swivel chair, battery concoction, points his nose up towards the sky to attract the lightning, and then gets struck by lightning. And and his bulb gets burst, and at that point I thought he died. I was like, fuck, like he's done.
It is a missed opportunity because there is a sacrifice there, and I'm like, oh, this would be really powerful if the lamp dies.
Yes.
And
it would be.
It doesn't.
We've already had one death. My goodness, it's for children.
But
we were already horrified.
And he recharges the battery, right?
He does.
Yeah, okay.
But then they lose that, though, at one point, and they're just hoofing it along with no batteries. It's whatever. But they wind up, getting separated and then brought back together. They find Blanky, right? But then is this when they get...
He's up in the tree, and they have to use the vacuum extension cord to
That's right.
loop it around the top branch, and
he sucks the cord. He sucks his own cord.
Don't let him suck his own cord.
And then he
that.
has a whole episode afterwards, which is also terrifying, watching him choke to death on his own cord.
Which we skipped over a little bit because before the storm kicked up and pulled Blanky out into the forest, there was a scene where the toaster falls asleep and has a nightmare.
Yeah.
A very vivid and disturbing
That's the clown,
nightmare.
yes.
Yeah, and it was knives trying to come after him, basically stab into the toaster or forks.
Well, they're forks, yeah. And then he's hanging above a bathtub.
Didn't it start? They were in the cabin kitchen. The master was making jam or toast on jam or something like that, and there was some sort of electrical fire, and the master's gone, and all of a sudden the kitchen is fuming and there's flames, and the door opens at the far end, and in steps this giant clown with big teeth and evil eyes,
very much the Joker.
Yeah.
Very vertical face with just grotesque
very
features.
pointy.
And he's a firefighter. He's there to put out the water. or not. He's a firefighter. He's there to put out the fire with water.
That's what they do.
Yes, that is. And
Fire with fire.
yeah, and then that's what transpires into, I don't know, somehow the toaster being over like a pool of water, looking down at his potential death.
Yeah, and like literally over a bathtub, and it's like really, really high up. Yeah, the whole thing is.
And the music's
horrifying.
swelling, and like it's nightmare. It's a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, the
And-
music with the actual visuals
Yeah.
was it was frightening.
and it's disturbing at 32 years old. I don't know how it wasn't when I was 5 or 6.
Do you remember
really
what the clown
don't.
said to him?
No, what did he say? He said something.
He said run.
He said, "Run."
yeah.
And that was horrifying.
Yeah.
As in, like, no.
I guarantee you this fueled some of my nightmares. It had to.
Yeah.
Had to influence what I saw.
I pushed it far in the back of my mind and
Yeah.
didn't.
Something I had not remembered something that didn't like just come straight back to me as I was rewatching it was like the conversation. I remember Blanky like getting left out when they were all going to sleep. Like they didn't want to sleep with him. The radio makes a circle around himself. He's like, nobody cross this line, or nobody cross this line. I can't talk like him. But the toaster's over there going to sleep, and he and the lamp kind of have it out. Like the lamp is like, why are you being so nice to the blanket all of a sudden? And he's like, what are you talking about? We've always been friends. And I didn't quite understand that whole interaction, but I didn't know if like him being worried that the lamp was mad at him and that everybody was mad at him is what fueled this nightmare, or I don't know. That was kind of weird too.
And everyone's kind of like I said, they're nice to each other, but they're also mean to each other. Everyone's kind of existing in their own plane.
Yeah, they're all kind of jerks. The toaster is trying to be nice.
I think
the
that
Blankies is nice.
When the
but-
toaster had the nightmares, when his character card flipped a little bit, and
Yeah.
he started becoming.
It's just more tense.
I mean, yeah,
more on edge.
He became. The toaster became more endearing, and like that's when he like started going to Blanky and understanding that Blanky just needed somebody, and the toaster was being selfish, and so I think he had that nightmare of serving a purpose, basically. But anyway, and I think this is where we get the, if I'm not mistaken, Blair, one of the funniest lines from John Lovitz. And
wait, it's coming. It's not. The vacuum gets really mad first after he chokes on his own cord, and he starts like he tells them off. He just like goes off on everybody, and then right after that, when they all, I forget how they all end up in the river. Somebody jumps in the river.
I think
It's
doesn't the
dropped.
vacuum like ride off.
Wait. No, the vacuum saves them all from the river.
That's what it was, yeah.
And because they were like, they all jump on board the vacuum after he's been just literally yelled at them and berated them. He's like, okay, I'm going to save you all. And then they get out, and then they're walking off. Like, they're like, okay, we all survived. And that, I guess that's when it's, hold on, is it, the radio says, things could be worse.
And then the lamp looks over at the radio and goes, "How could things be worse?"
He goes, they couldn't. I lied.
They couldn't. I lied. Delivers it with perfect comedic timing, and it's like, how many times have we said that in our lives?
Oh my gosh.
They couldn't. I lied. Well,
Could be worse.
and they end up getting out of the forest, right? And out
Yeah.
of the river.
They get out of the forest, and then they like make their way into like a swamp or marshland area,
Yeah.
right?
A bog.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the difference between a
bog.
marsh and a swamp and a bog?
I don't know.
I'm sure there are.
Something.
And
I don't care enough to look it up.
the vacuum ends up because they're carrying him because
Yeah.
he tried to choke himself on his own cord and kill himself.
Yeah.
So suicide there.
Another
Add
dark
that
element
to the list.
He literally tried to do that.
And they were like, "Get the cord out of his mouth!" And the way that they were saying it
But
freaked
then
me out.
saved everybody.
But it saved everybody. And
Yeah.
then he ends up falling into some quicksand.
Sinking mud or something like
Yeah.
that.
And
And
this is where this really weird part happens, where this guy, this rotund fellow, shows
and a
up, and
giant
he's just
truck,
A
like a
monster.
monster truck.
massive,
Literally.
massive
monster
monster truck.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking
And-
about 10-foot wheels.
The weird part is he's climbing the tires.
Yeah, he climbs the tires,
How
scales
else
the
is
tires.
he gonna get us there?
He somehow knows there's something in this, sinking
No,
mud.
he just hears the radio. He's like, I
That's
thought I
right.
heard a radio.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. I
thought
Yeah.
I heard a radio.
That sounds just like him.
And Kyle, describe this character for us.
He's like a series of spheres placed on top of each other.
Yeah, he's
He's almost like a very. I'm trying to think of the most objective way to describe this person. There's not
Portly?
a lot of like shape. They're very amorphous when it comes to their overall appearance.
but he's big.
And
He is.
He's a large man.
large, and he large but squat.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like and he has round glasses on.
Big old round
And
glasses.
he's just he's
Eccentric.
eccentric, but he's not like unbelievable.
No.
He's very like his glasses are big, but like it makes him look kind of nerdy. But he's also like clearly an adult, a business person, and he
kind of looks
gets
like what's his name from Seinfeld.
Newman.
Oh yeah,
Hello.
Bigger
Yes,
Newman,
yes,
but
yes.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what's unbelievable is the fact that he is driving his enormous monster truck around a marsh swamp bog looking for
Parts.
parts.
Yeah.
Like when you find out what he does, like, oh, he should have been at like an antique store or like
he owns, like, a
even going through a
consignment.
dumpster in a city. Like, why is he in a marsh? That
With
part,
his stupid
you have to suspend
dog.
disbelief with his dumb dog.
His ugly dog. It was not a very attractive dog.
And you find out he owns his like consignment shop.
He throws all of our characters in the back of his truck and takes them to a.
So sorry. There's a part I want to discuss before we get into what happens when they go to the man's creepy shop, is when they're actually going into the sinking sand, which really was more of a thing in the 80s than ever has been since then. Nobody talks about sinking sand anymore, but there were so many movies with sinking sand at that time. And they're going, it's vacuum first, and they're like, he's just gone. And then suddenly you realize that they're all attached to his cord. So they're all like very slowly also going into the sinking sand.
Oh, yeah.
And at one point, I think it was the toaster and the blankie left, and and the radio. And the blankie goes in, and he's like, Blankie, no. And Blankie goes, he basically is like, no, I'm fine with it. Like, that's basically what Blankie,
accepts it,
he's
yeah.
just like, I guess this is it. This is death. And there's a moment like that years later in Toy Story 3. There's like a very similar moment where they all are like, I think we're all going to die. And they all like accept it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they end up not. But like, I had that thought. I was like, oh my gosh, that's just like that moment that made everybody just bawl cry in the theater watching Toy Story 3 as full grown adults.
We're going to visit that again
Yeah.
at the end.
Okay.
I
I'm
mean-
excited. But anyway, it was just a weird moment. And then the radio is the last one to go. And he's like saying his little thing. And anyway.
Like
he pulls them
goodbye,
out.
cruel world
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, I
thing.
think he literally says, like, goodbye. Grandma.
Yeah, and then so he picks them all up, takes them to the shop, and
It's a consignment parts shop.
and it's like
weird.
Then we go into like the Universal horror version of this movie where they take them all in the back
room.
and throw them in, and they're like, okay, maybe we'll be okay, but then they see all these weird appliances and
That have
fixtures.
been like manipulated and like pieced together with like a
Right.
razor and like
tape recorder.
like in one like a hodgepodge.
the lamp was
Mishmash.
Renfield, and
Yeah, can somebody Cal, can you do the lamp's voice? I wanted to be able to do it so badly.
It was like a gremlin's voice.
Yeah, it
honestly.
sounded
I'm
like-
I'm trying to remember how
it sounded
how
like
they listened to
Frankenstein.
it.
hey, everybody.
Oh, the lamp, not
Yeah.
lampy. Oh yeah. No, he was very much like this.
It was like Igor almost too.
Master. It was
he was Igor. That's
Yeah.
exactly who I wrote that down as like he's definitely doing an Igor voice.
Do you see? No one will ever leave.
I want to make a reference.
that was
Oh,
terrible.
God.
That was disgusting. I want to make a reference to something. This kind of reminded me of Sid in Toy Story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very much
Mhm.
the
Parts
parts
that he put
Exactly.
together. That was influenced by this.
100%.
Had to have been.
So this whole movie was just.
Well, and
Toy
this-
Story is just this movie.
this
but less
song
scary.
this song that these appliances started singing was very catchy. It's called
Yeah.
"This Is a B Movie."
Okay, I have not one, and I don't care about lyrics. I know as
Yeah.
a musician, some people care about lyrics. I don't. I can't write words. I'm not a lyricist. I only care about the chords and the melody. But this even got me. I was like, "What are they
Yeah.
saying? What are they saying?"
They were talking about, they were referencing a lot of horror movies and a lot of like just shit that happens to everybody. And then they were saying it was a B movie. It's a B movie.
But they were saying something about a B-movie
Yeah.
show.
It wasn't too clear, and like the captions that we used didn't really.
The captions
Shine
changed
light on
every
it.
single time. It would be the same exact line, and they would say something. It's almost like the captions were like, "Yeah, we don't fucking know either. Like, we can guess."
The one thing I thought about, because I'm curious what everyone thinks about this scene. The one thing I thought about this would be like the midlife crisis part of your life, where you start trying to change, or you're starting to do like plastic surgery, and trying to like live a second life and it doesn't end up being what you think it is.
Well, then we talked about the character that's the lamp and the shaver and she's three things. Her name's, she's like, I'm a mishmash. That's like a Joan Rivers voice. I think she was trying to, that actress was trying to do a Joan Rivers. So basically saying like, look at me. Like, I'm all three of these things. I'm a mishmash. That's the worst Joan Rivers that's ever been done. Joan Rivers would roll over.
No, like,
That wasn't that
give
bad.
her a round of applause
That wasn't
for
that bad.
Joan Rivers.
No. Nobody,
He didn't.
nobody.
He fell asleep.
You could give her a round of applause.
No, we're not going to do that. But yeah, so like for me, this was kind of like the midlife crisis, like where you're trying to turn back the clock and you can't, and it's like it ends up being horrific because you're going through surgical stuff and what's happening now in the world is this guy is pretending to sell new products by stripping them from old products. So this guy comes in and goes, hey, do you have a blender for me or blender motor?
Blender motor.
And he has a blender in the back that he just, created a smoothie with
He
and
just
chugged
used.
it.
And this is the part that I think is like really, really, like it's just so like industrial and like, oh, I will take this and I don't care about anything else with this whole product except for this one piece. So the rest of it's now trashed, and I don't care. And
Yeah, like
it
why
made me
didn't you
think
just
of,
give him a new blender?
I don't know.
Like in the Holocaust when they were like literally just killing people just because like it made me think of that kind of stuff. Like it was very dark scene.
Yeah.
And like that whole blender.
And what is
I remember as a kid.
What does he do? Or what he takes the blender, he puts it in that, what do you call that device that he cranks and closes?
It's a vice clamp.
Vice clamp. Yeah, there you go. And he just starts to pick it apart. Like you see the dramatic effect was like you see a shadow. He takes like a flathead and you look at the wall and it's him like holding up something like pointy and he goes down aggressively to like stab the appliance and like break it open while this, poor little blender is squished together by this vice clamp and it's gripped and it can't move. It's
Very
prisoner.
horror movie.
Yeah, it's almost
Using their parts to give life to something else.
yeah,
It's
scientific
just-
Or just to make
experiment or
money off of
something.
it. He's just trying to make
yeah,
money.
he's
Yeah.
like, oh, I got just a shipment in. Oh, it's my last one.
I don't know how much money this dude makes with this little job he has because if a blender motor is only $5.39 and he lives in the middle of nowhere, what's his clientele?
Well, he's getting everything from a swamp. He's not paying for it.
You
He
saw
is,
the guy that he
it's-
was selling it to, too, and he looked, ooh.
But what's the demand in the area that he lives? Granted, we're splitting hairs here. It's a fucking cartoon. It's an animated
we don't
movie.
know. He
but
could be selling other stuff. Like
He
he could
could.
actually be we don't know what's out on the show floor.
he could
Based
be
on the
doing
way
this
some
and
of those
that.
appliances were acting.
We don't know.
They're on
But
something.
the next thing he's like, well, do you have tubes for radio?
Radio tubes, yes. And he's like, oh, I've got a last set right here, or they just came in this morning, whatever the hell he says. And he goes in and radio starts to hide behind toaster and
Begging. To,
yeah. What happens at this point? Someone take
Is
it from
this
here.
is this post the song that they sang?
It's after the
this is
song.
after
Yeah.
the movie.
Yeah, the whole theater, the whole
Yeah.
song and yeah, really.
Kyle, what happens? How does the radio get out of this predicament?
Well, they cleverly decide to play a trick on this guy who's clearly very dumb. And they make a contraption out of the vacuum that like it's the toaster on the top, the lamp is shining onto the toaster, I think, and then Blanky is around the toaster as the head, and it comes towards him, and it's like scooting along the ground, and he's like, ooh, and the guy sees his reflection in the toaster and flips out. He's like, it's me, like he's never seen a mirror before, and he just gets his head conked and he just gets knocked out. Almost like our friend in The Mummy when he gets the scary.
Oh
spot.
yeah, that was a good.
Yeah,
What
just
a
real-
callback to season 1.
There you go. Never forget.
Never.
So they all kind of make a jailbreak after that. After he knocks himself out, and now they're back out into the wild.
Yeah, now they make their way to the city, which I was like, when they started coming up on the hill with the city, I was like, this was the worst zoning I've ever seen in a city before.
It was like bumfuck nowhere.
and then
honestly.
all of a sudden there was just a bunch of skyscrapers on one hill.
But they did travel a little bit further down the road to get to that
It
point.
looked like Metropolis was sitting on top of New York City.
I actually thought that animation was really pretty. I thought it was really well done. There was one shot. I was like, oh, that's a very like unique look.
You know
I
what
don't know.
city that reminded me of?
I was
Cleveland.
going to say, what city was it?
But there's no shitty.
We don't need
shitty
to talk
lake.
about that.
There's no shitty lake.
Kyle, how do you feel about that?
About Cleveland?
He loves Cleveland, I hear.
So Cleveland is one of those cities in the world that's very much like Calcutta or, the Horn of Africa or, just dirty places in Russia. It's very much like trying to be something it isn't. And it suffers for it. The people suffer there for it. And it's just if you can imagine what like exhaust fumes, like what that general vibe is as a city, that's Cleveland.
Would you say it's like living through the 7 plagues in that city alone?
That's a little too light of a term, I'd say.
Way
It's
more
like
plagues.
it's more like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Yeah.
So this city was still standing, so obviously wasn't Cleveland, and there was no smog levels. So we the appliances end up making their way into, I guess, New York. I guess it was going for New York, right?
Yeah, something like that.
With no body of water around it.
No,
So.
they get there and they're like, "How do we find the master?" And then what do we switch over to at this point while they're trying to find their way?
What do we switch over to?
Well, we don't stick with the characters. We go to a completely new set of characters.
Oh.
Yeah, we see the master,
We see the master.
in his home.
And he lives in an
Oh,
apartment
okay,
complex.
yes.
and
And
he's
then
18.
Yeah,
he's 18.
He's on his way to college.
Getting ready to go to college. It says he's talking to his... Is he talking to his girlfriend first, or is he talking to his
Mother.
mom first?
Yeah.
Asking about underwear and socks.
That's right. Do you
He's
have your
got like
socks?
14 pairs of socks. He's like, "Oh, mother, I'll survive."
He also looks 37.
Yeah, he looks like Ron
Sounds
Howard.
like it too.
Yeah, like they could have he's not. They animated him. They could have animated him to look like. I guess people looked older in the 80s.
I guess, yeah. And his girlfriend, when she shows up,
She's old.
She's-
She's older.
she's 42.
Definitely old. I also made a note. She's kind of an asshole. I'm not a big fan of hers.
I thought she was fine. She's very
Andrew's
forceful.
type.
Definitely, yeah. I like
Andrew
being
loves
told
a
what to
demanding
do.
woman. So he's like trying to furnish his new dorm room in college, and he's like, "I'm going to go to the old cabin before we sell it, and I'm going to get all the old appliances." It's weird. He's thought about them now after like 10 years.
And he mentions every single one by name.
There's a blankie and a toaster
And a lamp.
and an old vacuum cleaner and a blown out air conditioning unit.
And one of my favorite lines from this movie, it was so stupid. The mom was like, "Oh, honey, you can just take my lamp." And it's that big blobby purple one who's a shitty person.
Looks like a Star Wars character.
Yeah, he's not. That lamp is not nice. And he was like, "I'm not going to take your lamp. What will you do?" And
She was like, "Oh, honey, I'll live in the dark."
"All of the dark. I'll get some candles and read by candlelight." I'm like, why did you choose to go
You
that
are a
route?
rich woman. This apartment is well furnished
Yeah.
and in the middle of like this like metropolis city. So
This
like
movie's about she's showing that she's sacrificing her. She's giving everything to her
son.
son.
Yeah.
She has nothing. She has no purpose left. She's already raised her
She is-
son. I'm just
she's
gonna
a husk.
live. I'm gonna live like a pilgrim.
yeah, like it's all about this movie's all about sacrifice, everybody.
I just thought it was funny that the writers chose to go that route instead of her saying like, "Oh, I'll just go buy another one." No, I'll get candles and read by candlelight.
No, I'm gonna be really,
really
extreme.
specific and odd.
They rush out.
They leave.
And all the appliances in the new apartment are like, "He's going for old appliances. He should want us."
And
And,
these-
they're modern.
They're
very
modern. They're cutting edge.
modern for 87.
Yeah.
Giant stereo that's like 10 feet tall.
Black and white floor.
A
The
big
stereo
fucking computer.
looked like the computer from War Games.
Yes, yes.
It took up like so much like area.
And then, of course, the television, which
television.
becomes really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, the television is. It looks like the television was the television they took from the cabin. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think that's what comes along next. But anyway, the appliances somehow
They show up at the door.
Yeah, I don't know how they did.
Oh,
it.
they find a phone book.
This has Mr.
Yes.
Master in it.
Because
Yeah.
they use, and then they have a phone book, and then they ask, they rip the page out, and then they talk to the. I did air quotes there. I know this is a.
She's doing air
auditory
quotes, everyone.
media.
Air quotes by Blair.
She's talking to the what do you call the
traffic
stoplight?
light?
The traffic light.
Yeah.
They like ask the traffic light, and the traffic light
In this
doesn't
city of
answer, but it
millions
answers.
of people, yeah.
Yeah, they just the people can.
The
have
green
you-
arrow points to the right.
Right. He's
You know?
like, ding. Also, are you indicating that they can talk to people? Because it's very clear. We haven't mentioned this, but as soon as a person turns and looks at any of the appliances, they immediately go dead. Like
Toy Story.
their eyes go away,
Toy Story.
their mouths go away. Yeah, that's an important point.
Terrifying.
So the appliances show up at the new apartment, and the new appliances are being assholes to them. And in the meantime, we flash over to the cabin where Homeboy and his girl show up.
Yeah.
And they're trying to find the appliances, and it looks like there's a break-in.
Well, I think it was just the mess that the appliances left.
They're thinking
someone's trashed the place.
Yeah, and she was like, it looks like it was trashed before they got here. She's just being really mean.
See,
Yeah.
listen.
Which Andrew can turn on for Andrew.
He's like, ugh.
Sure.
So
Tell me about my mess.
So he ends up fixing the air conditioning unit.
Yeah.
Phil Hartman comes back to life.
And then what does he do when he gets turned back
cries.
on? He starts crying.
Yeah, he does.
because he's getting second life now. And in the meantime, what happens to the appliances back at the apartment?
They get kicked out
get
by the
heated.
new appliances
Yeah.
and into a dumpster, and they get taken to a fucking dump.
Yeah, and thank God the TV that they
Remembered
recognized
them,
from
yeah.
the cabin remembered them and saw it happen and made note of which dump they were going to.
And it's cool because the TV I think it was a cool way that they decided to animate it is the guy on the TV is the voice of the TV. So
Yeah.
it's not like the TV is alive necessarily. It's the man on the TV.
broadcaster,
The broadcaster,
whatever.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
Which
weird
is
about
very
it.
sentient and very Videodrome-esque.
Very.
Yeah, it's weird, but I like that.
But those new appliances were fucking pricks. They had a wide range of characters. My favorite was the sewing machine.
Oh my
they were like
God.
these two girls from Jersey who were just so judgmental, and they had big, eyes and eye makeup. It was just they talked like that.
Very gossipy.
Super gossipy.
Very.
And then like when they would get near, they would like smile like super fake. And then Hi, so good to see you. Oh, can you believe that filthy blanket, if you can even call it a blanket?
Yeah. No, they were it was very much like two Rizzos
Yes.
in one body.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
But the appliances literally get kicked out the window, like out the window in a dumpster, and they're taken away to the dump. And this is where our movie starts to really conclude in a way.
This is it. This is the part that I really remember as a kid.
Hated.
This was I think this is my favorite part.
It is the best part of
upon
the movie, I
watching
think.
it, when I'm older. But they're taken to a dump, and there's this giant magnet that picks things up.
It's more like a junkyard than a dump, right? We call it a junkyard.
It's a junkyard.
It's a junkyard.
And
It's a
it's-
junkyard. But the junk that's there is trash.
Yeah, because
and
it's all like
It's mostly
metal
cars.
things.
Yeah.
mostly cars, but like metal
and they're trying
appliances.
they're crushing the cars down, and there's a
metal cubes. And
and like processing those. We get this musical number, which is great.
It's
It's called Worthless.
And
It's so scary. And even before what really sets the scene for this, what sets this scene is the ominous hum of the magnet.
the magnet's like
you
this
can hear
constant,
it. That's
just like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
just like that.
but it's loud. It's very loud, and he has a very red and angry face, and it's just
He
surveying.
really enjoys his job
Yeah.
of
Picking
killing
people up
and crushing these cars.
Well, I don't know. There's in this scene though, like this is where like the real like symbolism is like this is like death. You do what is it? What's the saying? The only two things you do in life are die and pay taxes.
Death
like
and taxes. Only two things
Yeah.
are certain in life.
certain in life, yeah, death and taxes. And
Unless
this
you
is
have
death.
tax fraud, which
And
It's a
in that
different
case, you
podcast.
definitely won. You're immortal.
then you're definitely getting to death before anyone else.
But I think the crane, the magnet, was like death himself.
Yeah.
Ushering, and you can try to cheat it and escape it all you want, but
It's inevitable.
He's just
it's
doing his
inevitable.
job.
It's just this is the job he has to do,
And
and it's very, very, very almost cut and dry, but really scary.
It's sad. I mean, while he's picking up these cars and putting them on the conveyor belt to be crushed, they're all singing about their experiences and like what they did. Like, I once took a Texan to a wedding. I used to live in Kansas City, Missouri. I got my kicks on Route 66. They're talking about all the things they saw and experienced, and it's flashing before their lives before they're ended. And I don't know.
And there was an Indy 500 car.
Yes, there
and
was.
he got into a wreck in the Indy 500. Couldn't even remember if he placed.
Yeah.
So it was like, that was brutal.
And
Like
then
a
there
young
was-
death at a young age.
Yeah.
There was a hearse talking about how it took, bodies to the cemetery and stuff like that. And it's giving like,
It's giving.
It's the end of life. It's
the end of life.
It's the recollection of like your time spent and that the end is here.
But it's also giving not a humanistic aspect to these inanimate objects, but in a sense it is. It's talking about the stories. Memories.
Yeah.
And we all have toys and appliances that have been in our lives, since we were young. And we remember things that we had when we were kids. And it's always tied to a piece in time. And, it's how you view...
Like this movie.
Yeah, like anything. And it's all about how you view it and what it means to you and whether you carry that with you or not. But eventually, it will come to an end.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's so poetic and so deep, and it strikes you to the core. And I don't...
But like, did you also? I just want to know, Andrew. Did you also pick up on the theological overtones of like Christianity?
Yes.
Yeah.
In this last part?
especially in
Yeah.
the words of the song and stuff.
Well, and I want
lyrics.
to drive that back while you're bringing it up, Kyle, to the point of earlier we were talking about the master and a sense of purpose. Is this whole movie is a sense of purpose, and they're pursuing something that may not exist in this whole movie because they don't know anything about the master or what. Like, they just know it's this kid
And yet
from their childhood.
They have faith. They
They have
believe in
faith,
something
yeah.
that's, bigger and
And
greater
he's going to
than them.
return.
He's going to
Yeah.
return and save them and give them a purpose, right? So it is kind of like death is not there, because even if we're used up, the master will save us. And in this point, we talk about going through the lifespan of these appliances where they go out in the world on their own. They don't really know anything, but they believe full on the master will save them. They have all these like instances where they hit a midlife crisis. They're kind of booted out for new people, which could be their kids because they're a descendant. Like, we're talking lamp to lamp. And now these new appliances are kicking them to a home. And now they're in a home, which is this junkyard of used up cars and appliances that are on their last leg. And no one's coming for them. And so at this point, they're still believing in the master that's going to save them. So it is like very religious.
I would say like the pinnacle for me of that whole setup that you just described, Chase, was when we're gonna have to talk about it eventually. So, the toaster does sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
Sure does.
They are
Very, very much like Jesus sacrificed himself for
to save
all mankind
us.
to save everybody. That did stop everlasting death. It's a whole like,
Talk us
thing
through
in that
that scene,
moment.
Kyle, because that's a very pivotal scene. They're finally...
They're essentially there's like this whole I'm going to distill it down to this. It's a cat and mouse between the magnet and the appliances with the master there, and it's a whole
he shows
tiptoe
up.
dance. He shows up.
We forgot that
because
little part.
The TV's help.
Yeah.
The TV helps him, and he decides to go there.
That part was cool.
So they got to the same. What is it? What do we say, Blair? It's a junkyard.
Yeah,
Junkyard, yeah.
Junkyard. Okay, so it's a junkyard essentially, and
He's going there because he didn't find the appliances and wants to get some discounts
No.
or whatever.
but he
Yeah.
gets there, and then again, this is like a whole 7-minute scene of like them just barely missing each other by like a hair's breadth, and like there's the magnet trying to get them. They gets them, and they get to put on the conveyor belt into the smasher, but then they jump off. That happens like 2 other times, so it's essentially it's just building tension.
Yeah.
Not really missing anything there. But the culmination is that the master finds out on the conveyor belt, oh, this is my blanket. Oh, this is my radio. Oh, this is, and goes down the line. And the only one that's missing is the toaster. But the master gets pinned to the conveyor belt when junk gets put down on him. because he's trying to hold on to his stuff and the magnet got him.
This part's so scary.
And he's pinned there, and this thing is crushing everything in front of him. He's
Getting
next.
closer and
And
closer.
the toaster, closer and closer, inching closer and closer. The toaster sees him. He's up on high, and he sees him. And it's this whole like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then the toaster decides, I'm going to jump into the cogs of the machine and let it mangle my body so I can save everybody I love. And it's so poignant and very, I don't know. With the like it is religious, yes, but there's also like some like warrior like mentality thing in there, like these are my brothers, these are my people, I will do whatever it takes. There's a big community, like it's a lot of different things at one time.
Yeah, and it's like it's purpose of life, right? The toaster had a purpose at that point where
Yeah,
the
right.
whole,
He found a new purpose.
Yep.
the whole point was he finally had a purpose, and that was to save everybody. And then he ends up saving the master, and it's weird that this kid does not have a name at this point in the movie.
No.
Was it
No, he never
Chris?
does.
His mom said it.
Oh, Chris sounds right.
I
don't
think
know why.
I think that's what
I
it
think maybe it is
was.
Chris.
I think that was the girlfriend's name.
Chris is the girlfriend's name. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Oh, that's such a 80s girl name.
And it's
Yeah, with a K.
It's spelled CHRIS.
Because it's like
In
Christina.
the credits, yeah, Christina.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Toaster saves him, and it gets all mangled. And then fast forward, we're back in the apartment, and he's fixing up the toaster.
Their dorm room, right?
Is it no? I think no.
Is
It was back at the apartment because he drove away at the end. If you remember, he packed
Okay,
up the
yeah,
car
yeah,
and
yeah,
drove away. But they're back in the apartment. He's fixed up the toaster. I don't know how you fix up bent and
Or why.
mangled
Or why.
metal or
'Cause
why.
he
But
sacrificed himself. Chase God.
yeah, there's always redemption. Always.
Was it going to be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, this toaster saved me, so.
But he saves the toaster, fixes him up, throws all those appliances in the back of his trunk with the trunk wide open, and drives off into the sunset. And that's pretty much
Maybe
it.
maybe he's a visual arts major in college and turns the toaster into some kind of like art
He mangles it
project.
further.
Maybe.
Yeah. That'd be,
In which I saw it as the appliances were crushed in this reality.
Yes.
And this is them life after
this
death.
is their heaven.
Yeah, and this is their heaven. So now they're with the master. And then that wraps up the brave little toaster.
yeah.
Oh man, oh man.
A lot to take in. I feel like we rambled a lot, but there's just so much to digest and dissect, and it's a whole plate.
That's a lot.
It's a whole plate of
It's a lot of
stuff.
So, Blair, let's start with you since you're the guest and this is the movie you chose.
Sure did.
How do you feel
what's
about
wrong with me?
watching? How do you feel about watching this movie now as an adult versus when you were a kid?
I meant to say this earlier. It's not like I haven't tried to watch this movie since I was a kid. I've tried, but like we said, it's really hard to find. Once I no longer have my VHS copy and / a way to play a VHS, I've tried to rent it before on various platforms, and you can find the other two, but you can't find the OG. And I honestly completely understand why I liked it, just based off of what the other films I liked as a child, which were also really sad and scary. I loved it. I still really liked watching it as an adult. I feel like there's a lot. I understand the themes a lot more, although there's still a lot of metaphors things that you brought up. And like, oh man, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would never have thought about it. I take things for just face value. I just don't. Again, I don't believe in
For
metaphors.
toaster value.
Yeah, right. Sure. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would watch it again. I'm gonna definitely recommend it to other people and say, hey, have you watched that movie in a while? You should look it up on YouTube because you can watch the full movie there.
Andrew, what about you? How are you feeling?
I don't know how I watched this movie as a kid and was okay. But
Are you okay?
Are
Would
we
consider
okay?
you okay?
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yes, okay.
But like, there's no way I could have comprehended any of the themes or, what they were trying to showcase in this. It's a very mature movie, and the creator, Reese, I think his name's John Reese, writer, director, he did a Reddit Ask Me Anything a couple years ago, may have been like 5 years ago, but he had spoken to the idea or the targeted audience for this, and it was for people who are coming of age, people who are going off to college. It wasn't meant for kids ever from the start.
Yeah.
Which is
Interesting.
Which is pretty obvious, but those are his words exactly, and that was one of the reasons Disney didn't like, because they wanted it geared towards more children, where this was for a mature audience, ages 17 to 21. And it's supposed to, he said his goal was to really, think about all the, toys and, items you had in your life, and talk about the value and place that they held in your life and what that meant. And that's why they gave them animation and gave them livelihood. So it was for people who were older and moving on into a different chapter of their life, and I think it's perfect for people our age.
So I actually have recently, I'm really good at timing, so I've just now found the notes that I took on the novella that was written by, I feel like we need to say his name, Thomas M. Dish.
Yes.
Dish with an S-C-H, Dish.
Dish.
The
Jerry
novella.
Sorry, I want to say Jerry Reese. I don't know what I said before that, but go on. Sorry.
Jerry Reese and Thomas M. Dish.
There you go.
He wrote the novella, and it was written as a bedtime story for children.
Interesting.
And when they read it, and it did win some awards, but there was a quote that I don't remember it exactly, but somebody was like, yeah, this isn't for children. This is for like eccentric adults, basically.
Yeah.
It was not super well received by certain groups of people who thought this is definitely not for children. But it was. So originally it was intended for children. And so I guess that's what they were trying to recreate with the movie, but then not either way. I mean, that was the case for a lot of things in the 80s. There were a lot of things that would not get made for children these days. They would not put in the children's movies now.
And Reese wanted this to be a movie that, we look at and reflect on our childhood and how things are vastly different than obviously compared to what they are now. So like, it's perfect for people of our age, and I'm glad we watched it.
Yeah.
Kyle, what about you?
As a child, really impacted everything. Looking back on this, that with anything that had to do with mortality or like the afterlife or like, aging, like this is kind of where that stems from. And I don't know if they meant to make this so good, but it's very, very well done. The voice acting is incredible.
So good.
The score is very good, and it sounds like it's from another time. It sounds like it's from the 50s, 60s, even 40s.
Yeah, it
kind of
does.
like what you were saying, Blair, like with like the Fantasia kind of element to
very
it. It's
Fantasia.
very, very much one can't exist without the other kind of thing on its own. But together they make a higher level of art, and just the again, whether they meant it or not, but some of the allegories that are there and some of the the fun games that we get to pick apart with this it makes it something more than what it is. It kind of transcends itself in that sense. And I know it sounds weird because we're talking about an old Disney movie from the 80s, but it very much is a special movie that wouldn't, like Chase was saying, that this would not get made today. This is something that would be very, like, why? What's it about? Okay, well, this is really scary and it's going to scare kids, and this is a little too heady for everybody. We don't need to make movies like this. But I think it informs you as a child, like, facts of life, things about the world, and it's told in a way that's realistic, at least, and it's scalable to a child. So I think that it does more. It punches above its weight. Is what I'll end with.
It is indeed a classic. I think it's the first movie we've watched on this show that, like, we've watched some movies that hold up, but this is kind of timeless. I feel like, even 100%. Though that these appliances are kind of outdated, but it doesn't feel old. It feels like we're still dealing with relevant times. And
Wait. Are you saying that I picked the best movie? Are you saying that I won this podcast? That's what I'm hearing.
You tell her, or
what's my
Kyle? Tell her what you won.
So what you won is a crisp handshake,
By which one of you?
young lady.
Andrew.
Oh, Andrew's the most
God.
limp-wristed of us all.
Yep.
Andrew has the crispiest handshake.
So glad to be
Yep.
here.
I've got my calloused hands,
Can't wait.
They're very dry all the time.
rotting fingernails. I've got
Eat with your
I've
hands
got
exclusively.
athlete's hand. You usually have athlete's foot. I have it on my hand. So
Is that because you've been doing a lot more headstands recently, Andrew?
yeah.
He has to wear socks on his hands
Yep.
at all times.
I regret every decision I made leading up to now.
So
This is indeed a classic movie that I think as an adult is way better than
Way.
it was as a kid.
Way.
And I don't usually you don't say that very often because usually there's a whimsicalness of some of these movies that like hit harder when you're a kid. But this one just makes you think. It makes you like try to paste a lot of things together and understand, and you relate to it in every way because we're at this point in our life where a lot of this movie has existed. Our coming of age, our getting out in the world, feeling like we're older than we are, feeling like there's newer models coming out, and feeling like some days that death is not that far.
Well, and we also, I mean, I don't know if this is something to be said about us because we're so awesome or just the movie itself, but we did all love it as kids. Like, that's the cool thing about it is, like, it's so great as an adult because of all the deep themes, but I didn't get any of that as a kid, and I still loved it. Yeah. Even though it was terrifying. It's kind of a magical movie.
to me, it's not loss of innocence that I feel, but it's kind of that like everything is fleeting in life. Every moment in time is life. So those things that you cling on to and think about so fondly, it's so short. So, cherish what you have when you have it. And that's what I ultimately take from this.
And I want to put a period to this too, because it's weird because this movie itself is kind of becoming itself.
Yeah.
Lost to time.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to exist.
How ironic.
That's so meta.
It's not going to exist on any other media unless people like us save it, which could happen.
Can we be the toasters?
No way.
I don't want to go into it. I don't want to go into that machine.
You have
I'm
to
so
throw yourself
scared.
into a bunch of gears.
I'm scared.
I know you wanted to succinctly pin that, but I wanted to add on that in this AMA that Jerry Reese had, he had talked about how he had tried to make a sequel, a true sequel to this in 2009.
No, it goes to Mars.
No, not that one or Brave Little Toaster to the Rescue, a true sequel. And, a lot of like the funders and, people who had put money into it like backed out. And then somehow the banks came and wanted their money and they had to shut the project down. And he pretty much said that the bigwigs in charge at like Disney like shut it down and made sure it didn't happen.
Yeah.
There was supposed to be a sequel leaving off from where the movie ended, and the people who hold the strings made sure it did not happen.
Yeah, and the only thing that exists on this is a VHS copy, and it won't be long before those will be completely obsolete, and we won't find those anymore. And because you can't even go to and we're so thankful for Videodrome, if everyone's listening out there.
Thanks, Videodrome.
Yeah, and they don't even have a copy of the VHS.
It makes me mad that Disney wants to do a shitty live-action remake of Snow White, but they don't want to put this out there for the masses.
No, a shitty one? Are you kidding me? Oh, that bombed? Oh, who saw that
1.7 on IMDb? What? Speaking of, do we want to do IMDb scores for this real quickly before we quit?
Before we wrap it up, first
Yeah.
off, Blair, does this movie hold up?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I think, like I said, I think it's even better. I'm not going to say I liked it more as an adult than as a kid because, I really liked it as a kid. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would
Andrew.
watch it again.
100%. Sorry, I kind of just jumped in there, but 100
You asshole.
without a doubt. Yes, it holds up.
Kyle, does this movie hold up?
Yes.
Very succinct.
They got it.
Chase?
Absolutely. I think it is better as an adult than it is as a kid, and I don't say that very lightly or say that very often.
Yeah.
So, do we want to take a guess at what the IMDb is of this movie?
Why don't we
Absolutely.
let's go around and give ours,
We'll start-
and then because I know what it is.
Okay.
I cheated a little bit before, but
Okay, Blair,
Ladies
what,
first.
what would be your IMDb rating for this one? And from listening to this is her favorite podcast, everybody.
It's mine.
This is great.
So, and we're hoping that all of her
Oh,
loyal fans, the
All
Material Girl
6.5
fans,
of them. Don't
that's
ask about the
still
half.
6
Don't
more
ask.
listens. Yeah. How would you? So you know how IMDb ratings work?
No, I
so-
don't. Can you explain it to me?
Okay, so IMDb ratings are a 1 to 10 score. You can have a decimal.
give you an example real quickly.
But Andrew treats it like a letter grade. If you remember the Aaron episode, Aaron Strand told us that he felt like any point grade you give it, you think it's better than this percentage of the movie. So if you give a movie
Got it. It's just the way that standardized grades work for.
I look at it on like a
kids.
letter grade scale, like, you know, an 86 would be, you know, like a B plus.
A B plus, but it is different thinking about it better than 86% of the movies.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different way of thinking about it, but I like both of those ways. I mean, is this what I want it to be, or what? No, this is what I think it is.
Yeah, just think it is. Your
I'm going to
grade.
go with an 8.3. I think it's high.
Yeah.
Dang.
I'll go with a 7.8.
Oh, he lowballed us. Kyle, what do you think?
I was gonna say 7.6.
I'm going 8.1.
That's high.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way that I put it into the 8 is if, you know, the script was a little more. I don't want to, you know, trash it because it's you know, it is an animated.
I don't remember
so-
what animated movies are like. I haven't paid enough attention to the IMDb scores of like The Great Mouse Detective or anything else.
Oh,
we've
those
talked
are
about.
much lower.
Or are they
7.8 is
Much
pretty
Well,
high.
then my guess was
so.
stupid.
So
I retract it.
what Blair? What do you think the actual IMDb rating is? Andrew,
I
you
don't
know,
think I
right?
should get to choose again.
Just what you think it is. This is a
Yes.
guess. We're making you guess here. Don't get nervous.
Don't
Nervous.
don't retract.
7.7.
You're close. It's 7.2.
You didn't even give anyone else a
Wow.
guess. Like,
Sorry.
you just cut us all off.
I don't
guessed
care.
that.
You all are worthless at this point.
We are. Kyle is
Don't talk
worthless.
to me like that, Daddy.
7.2, which I think is low. I think it's low.
Yeah.
So
So-
we're not terribly far off, but I think it's more worthy of 7.2.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, Blair, do you want to tell everyone what you got going on, where they can follow you, or maybe listen to some music?
Sure. You can follow my band page, Material Girl Atlanta, on Instagram, and the Facebook. And then also Dorothy Blair, DOROTHY BLAIR Music, also on Instagram. That's where I play my piano and sing my songs.
Come out to a show. She's mega talented.
Yes.
Great music. Great vibe.
Great performer.
So, yeah. Great
Thanks,
performer.
guys. Great at choosing movies to recap from our childhood.
There you go.
The best, some
The
might
best
say.
so far, yeah. So far. So that's it. You know what we do here on this show by now. We reach into your childhood nostalgia. We pull out the movies from your past. Today, we pulled out The Brave Little Toaster and found out, Blair,
It holds up.
it holds up. It's a highly recommended movie. We think you should go back and watch it as an adult. We really appreciate Blair being on this episode. Check her out. Follow her on the Instagram and the Facebook for Material Girl and her own Blair Perry music.
Thanks, peeps.
Kyle, do you know what we're doing next?
Your mom?
And with that, we are off. We hope everybody has a good, wonderful rest of their day, and we will see you next time.